our first introduction to our Prophet starts very early in life. When we are little kids, our parents take us near the picture of Prophet Zarathustra and say, Dadaji Karo. And the child starts bowing down to the Prophet and saying, Dadaji, near the photo. And from then onwards, the connection of the child starts as this is Dadaji, this is in a way God. And hence erroneously many of our children and sometimes even grown-ups refer to the picture of Zarathustra as Dadaji or God. Now, Zarathustra, who he was, when he was, why did he come to the earth? Was he an ordinary mortal or was he something special? We need to get all these things clear when we try to establish our connection with Prophet Zarathustra. Because when we call ourselves Zoroastrian, it is through Prophet Zarathustra that we have to establish our connection with Ahura Mazda. We have, in Zasane Ahura Mazda prayer, we call ourselves Mazdeastis Zaratoshtis. So first we are Mazdeastis, means we are worshippers of Mazda. But then we say we are Zaratoshtis. That is through the agency of Prophet Zarathustra, through the teachings of Prophet Zarathustra, we get connected to Ahura Mazda. So that is why knowing Zarathustra is very essential. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about who can become a prophet or who is a prophet. Now, there are certain guidelines for a prophet. One is that a prophet is a divinely appointed person. Means it's not something that as an afterthought that person has become a prophet because he is very learned or very great or something like that. A prophet is somebody who is chosen much before his birth and he is chosen for some purpose, for some mission. So a prophet is somebody who is not is a mortal but is a somewhat very special mortal. And so was our prophet Zarathustra, a very special person who was born mortal. Second aspect of a prophet, all prophets, this is for prophets in general, is that he comes to us to reveal something. Something hidden, something that our eyes can't see, something that our minds cannot easily identify. Those things the prophet comes to show. And from time to time, different prophets have come to show different aspects of humanity to mankind. And the third point is that a prophet is after all a human being, but a human being in a very special form. Who is a soul? But is a soul with special spiritual insight. Right from the beginning, who was chosen as a prophet. So these are and take any prophet, these are the aspects which are common to all the prophets. Now as far as Prophet Zarathustra is concerned, it has been universally accepted that he is the first prophet to reveal religion in the world. In the Avesta, the word for Zarathustra is generally Ashta. Ashta means one who is specially sent forth, a messenger. We have seen before that the word Faresta that we usually use for a divine being also means one who is specially sent forth. So we can say that the word Ashta and Faresta are somewhat very similar. No other mortal is generally identified as a Yajata. But Zarathustra is a mortal. Mortal means one who is born of a mother. So Zarathustra was one such mortal. You can call him a mortal because he was born of a mother. But his status, his spiritual status is identified as that of a Yajata. And when in Zoroastrian religion, when we talk of a Yazaka are special beings with whom we have to be in tune and who have been specially created by God to help mankind. There are innumerable Yazakas, but there are a few whom we know by name. There are about 40 or so Yazakas whom we know by name, but that does not mean that these are the only Yazakas, because in Avastha we are told that they are uncountable, innumerable. And as for the status of Prophet Zarathustra, he is referred to as first Athrava. He was first at Athrava. Yo koyo Athrava. Now, the word Athrava is generally today used to designate a priest. Literally, it means one who looks after fire. Athrava means a person who looks after fire. And Zarathustra was a person who looked after all sorts of fires. Because in Zoroastrian religion, the term fire generally does not mean fire, it means energy. It means a human being's soul. Everything comes in the concept of fire. Fire is a very broad aspect in Zoroastrian religion and very many connotations. So when we say Zarathustra and Athrava, elementarily we can say that he was somebody who was made to belong to this group. These groups, their 4 professional groups, were already in place when Zarathustra was born. Because Zarathustra was born a Mazdayasni himself. Hundreds of years before him, the Mazdayasni belief system was already in place. It was in place right from the time of a king called Gayomar, who started the Mazdayasni belief system. And thereafter, several small prophets had come, whom we call Sotians. Sotians are small prophets, not of the stature of a Yazaka, not of the stature of Zarathustra, but who came to aid or contribute something to the Mazdayasni belief system. So we have great kings like Gayomar, Hosham, Temuras, Jamshed, Faridun, Tekashu, who are referred to as Sotians. There is many prophets who came to this world before the coming of Zarathustra. So they in a way prepared the way. Zarathustra was the last of the prophets. I mean, there was no Sotian. There will be Sotians afterwards, but like Zarathustra crystallized the Mazdayasni belief system into the Mazdayasni Zarathustra religion. And from then onwards, that's why we call him a prophet, because a prophet is the one who comes to reveal a religion. So then the Mazdayasni belief system became a religion after the coming of the prophet. There is another word called Magav, and Zarathustra is referred to as also Magavan in the Gathas. Now, a Magavan was a special type of priest, who understood the workings of nature, who understood the laws of nature. You know, we, the scientists today, are trying their best to understand a human being, to understand the human body, to understand the human mind, to understand the workings of nature. But there are some divinely appointed people who knew this working. Even among the Indians, we have sages who intuitively, divinely knew all these workings. So these Magavas were special type of priests. And in fact, the word Magi that comes in, that is used by the Greeks later on, and from which the word magic came. Because magic, the people who knew magic were people who could control nature or control unseen things. So that's why the Magavas are also considered as doing some magic, because they had power over nature. So that's why they were referred to as the Magi. So Zarathustra belonged to the group of the Magavas. So he was, in fact, that's why rituals form an integral part of the religion. Now, there are some contentious issues in our religion which we always see that people always keep on debating about them. They do not have any direct relevance to our religious life per se, but still we are never unanimously agreed to this aspect. And one such thing is the date of the prophet. The reason for this, number one, is that our prophet was the first prophet. He was born in antiquity. He was born in prehistory. So that's why there is no direct history was not there in the first place. Archaeology has not yet reached there. Archaeology in a proper manner has not yet reached that period. And there is no exact direct evidence from the text that of those times that are existing. That's why we have to take recourse to indirect evidences from the text and from other sources. So we calculate his era, his time indirectly from several different perspectives, like historical perspective, from a language perspective, from internal evidences in the text, and from other evidences like astronomical, geological and archaeological also. Now, there are two main groups, about as far as the date of the prophet is concerned, there are two main groups and they are very diverse. Now, one group believes that the prophet was born in 6500 BC. The second group believes that he was born around 1500 to 2000 BC. Now you see a difference of 4000 years. A big difference, a big jump. There was a third group as well, which believed that he was born in around 600 BC. But now more or less people have done away with that idea. That 600 BC, it was definitely not there in 600 BC. The earliest is around today, is believed to be around 2000 BC. Now, it is not without reason that these two dates have been debated. Now, let us see the reasons why these two dates are debated upon. The first, the older date of 6500 BC is generally believed to be the date based on the Greek writers. And secondly, on some other evidences that we will see. But Greek writers generally say that there were three events: the expedition of Xerxes, the Trojan War, and the death of Plato. From these three dates, they count back that Zarathustra was born so many years before the expedition of Xerxes, Zarathustra was born so many years before the war, Trojan War, etc. So which are these dates? Now Diogenes says that he was born around 6480 BC, calculating from what he says. Other historian, Hermodorus, says he was 6180 BC. Pliny the Elder says he was about 6347 BC. Amyrbus gives us 6180 BC. Only Herodotus is the person who puts Zarathustra at 600 BC. But as I said, 600 BC is now totally discounted date. So generally people believe it's either a mistake on Herodotus' part, 10 was missing perhaps, or it was plainly inherited in 600 BC, but that date is now discounted. Now the thing is that the other Greek historians and other writers of their time have never said that the Greeks are wrong in saying this. On the contrary, they quoted them. And you know, one of the best proofs that the thing is authentic is that when you are quoted, then so when others quote, that means that there is some authenticity to these dates, whether or not we believe this is there. Now some other evidences corroborate these dates. Now what are those other evidences? Number one, geologically. We all, Ice Age has become too popular now even among children because of the movies. Everybody knows about the Ice Age. But in the collective consciousness of the world, also all religions have referred to the Great Deluge or the Ice Age or the Great Flood. Whether it's Bible's Noah or it is Manu of the Upanishads or it is Gilgamesh of the Babylonians or someone or the other, or our own Zoroastrian Ima or Jamshid. There has been some person in these civilizations who they say has saved the world from the Great Deluge or the Great Flood. Now we are told that King Jamshid saved the world from a great sort of ice age sort of a cataclysm. Now, we are told that Jamshid was almost 1000 years or more than 1000 years before Prophet Zarathustra. And King Jamshid was there at the time when this ice age came about, the last ice age. And he saved some of the people from it. So if you calculate back then this 8000 years or 6000 BC day makes sense that before almost 1000 or 1500 years before Zarathustra was King Jamshid. So this date makes sense from this perspective. Another reason is linguistic. Now Indian scholars, especially Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he was a great Sanskrit scholar.
His book that he wrote.
Yeah. In his book he is written quite extensively. So he and other linguists put Rigvedic Sanskrit. Rigvedic Sanskrit is the oldest form of Sanskrit to about 5000 BC. And linguists say that the Gathic Avastha is either akin to Rigvedic Sanskrit or even before that. So that also gives us a date which is almost 5000 to 5500 BC. That's quite old. So linguistically also we can place Zarathustra at quite an early date. Now astronomy is something which everybody do not agree or accept. But there are some people who believe in astronomy also. And one great Zarathustri scholar who was from Dadar itself, Kavi Ardeshar Khabardar. He was a Gujarati poet. He was not university literate, but his knowledge came from within, his intuition came from within. So Kavi Khabardar was a great Sanskrit and Avastan scholar, and he had great knowledge of astronomy also. And in some of our Avastan, other than the Gathas, there are mentions, and in the Pelvi text also, there are mentions of the stars and planets and constellations and their positions at certain point of time. And based on that, Kavi Ardeshar Khabardar had said that Zarathustra must have lived about 5000 to 6000 BC based on the astronomical calculations. And based on these things, there were some scholars like our own Behramghosh Temura Sanklesarya, Saurabh Balsara, Ardeshar Khabardar himself, and Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who confirmed to this date of Prophet Zarathustra that he was born somewhere around 8000 BC. Now there is another set of scholars whom I said do not go by this date. They go by the date of about 1500 to 2100 BC. Now what is their reason? Now in the Avastha, we get reference to iron and bronze in a great way. And that made the scholars believe that the Avastan must have been written in Bronze Age, Middle Bronze Age. Today, archaeology places Middle Bronze Age at 1500 to 2100 BC. And that's why it is on account of this indirect evidence which is there. And secondly, because it makes sense that if Zarathustra lived in Bronze Age, then he could not have lived more than 2000, further back than 2000 BC. So these scholars keep Zarathustra around 2000 BC. Another reason is that most people who studied Zoroastrian religion in the early years were Christians. And there is a chronology of creation based on the Bible also. And this age fits that chronology of the Bible also. So that's why they were more comfortable with this date rather than an early date, which would not conform to the biblical dates.
Sorry, can you explain that?
In Bible gives a worldview. Bible has a worldview about the story of creation, and it has mentioned the chronology with the number of years are mentioned, and it does not go beyond 5000 years. So,
I thought it said 7 days.
no, 7 days is the creation period. The creations were created within a 7 day span. but how far back they were created.
Okay.
We are discussing that,
I understand.
how far back the creations were created.
Okay.
So in that sense, it conformed to that. So that's why most of the Western scholars and most of the scholars who believe in the Western scholars, give us this date, 2000 BC, around 2000 BC. But whatever it is, Zarathustra, the earliest, and nothing changes. Whether you keep Zarathustra 2000 or 8000, very few things, not nothing, but very few things changes. Still, he is the first prophet to reveal religion in the world. And very respected scholar, Professor Dr. Mary Boyce, then other scholars who went to Europe to study the Zoroastrian religion, especially Khurshedji Rustamji Kama and Jamshedji Poonwala, they place the date of Zarathustra around 1500 BC. Now, archaeology also, it keeps on changing its dates. When these scholars existed about 4, 5, 6 decades back, at that time, archaeology was placing Bronze Age around 1000 to 1500 BC. After 30-40 years of further research, it has gone back by about 500 years, the Bronze Age date. So that's why this shift that you see is existing over here. Now, as there is a difference of opinion about birthplace, so is there a difference of opinion about the birthplace also. No exact place geographically is mentioned, but one thing is generally accepted, that Prophet Zarathustra was born somewhere in the northwestern part of the present day Iran. What Iran was in the earlier Peshwari and Kayanic times was quite different. The present day Iran is something quite different, but these places now are located somewhere in the northwestern part of modern day Iran. Now, what does Avesta and Pelvi text tell us about the birth of the Prophet, or the birthplace of the Prophet? They just say that there is a river called Vedaiti, and there is a place called Aryana Veja, and Zarathustra was born somewhere near this, his house was near this Vedaiti river in Aryana Veja. Now we were Aryans and we migrated quite a lot. And whenever we migrated, we gave the same names to the places, especially the rivers and the mountains and the expanses. So sometimes it becomes very difficult to locate the exact, because a river by the name of Vedaiti may be mentioned 2-3 times, and each time it may be a different river. Because generally they used to give names of some cosmological things to these geographical things. So a mountain which is mentioned, the same mountain may be 2-3 mountains. Now Aryana Veja, the entire expanse of the Aryans they used to call Aryana Veja. But we know that there were at least 2 or 3 southward migrations. So each time they settled for a few hundred years, they called that place Aryana Veja. So Aryana Veja also kept on changing. The Hindus call this expanse Aryavrat. The same expanse, because as we know, the ancestors of the Hindus and the ancestors of the Zoroastrians, both were Aryans and both coexisted at some point of time. But one thing is sure, that where we have modern day Azerbaijan, or there is a place called Raga or Rai, somewhere around there Zarathustra must have been born, that most of the scholars who have done extensive research have come to these conclusions. So this is western part of Iran. Then Prophet Zarathustra, after he became a prophet, after he got his revelation, he moved eastwards. And from 40 years to 70 years, he spent his life in a place called Balkh, which today we can identify as Bactria, which is at the confluence of Afghanistan, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. So Zarathustra spent the last 30 years of his life over there. Now we come to the very name Zarathustra. You know, it's a very special name, a very holy name. But the meaning of the name, when people try and understand it linguistically, they are sometimes taken by surprise. Now, Zarathustra is an Avestan word, a word belonging to the Avestan language. It is made up of two words, Zarath and Ushtra. The word Zarath, જે આજે બી આપણે ઝર ઝવેરાતમાં વાપરીએ છીએ और जर्जरित में वापरिए. Jurjerit means old or zar zaverat means yellow or golden. So in Avesta also the word zar generally refers to yellow or golden or old. And Ushtra is the Avestan word for camel. So Zarathustra generally means one who possesses mature camels or one who possesses old means exalted camels. Now one may think this is a very ordinary name for a prophet. But considering that Zarathustra belonged to a pastoral age, an agrarian period, and most of the names over there during his time were like this, like horse or cow or mill or camel, their names were connected like that. So it makes sense. But there are some people with a mystic bent of mind. They think that no, there is some hidden meaning behind this. And what will be the hidden meaning? Zarath, which means golden. Golden means something which is very precious, something which is very exalted. And Ushtra can be derived from the word Ushi. The word Ushi in Avesta means consciousness. So one who is having very mature, high, exalted consciousness. So that could be a mystic meaning of the word, which would give more happiness to a person who thinks of Zarathustra as a prophet. So we can take either of the two meanings. Now the Greeks who refer to him, we saw Greeks refer extensively to Zarathustra, they called him Zoroaster. And this word was adopted by the English speaking, European speaking people. So in English we call him Zoroaster. And that word comes from two words, Zor and Esther, means a golden star, which makes more sense for a prophet. So the Greeks also derived the name as Zoroaster and derived it from the two words, the golden star. In Pelvi language, which is a granddaughter, you can say, of Avestan language, the prophet is referred to as Zartusht or Zartukht. And in Middle Persian, in modern Persian or Neo-Persian, he is referred to as Zardusht. We call him Zarathustra's Pitama. We call our prophet Ashur Zarathustra's Pitama. And Pitama is the name of the 9th ancestor. You know, in the olden times, we did not have anything like surnames. People were referred to with their family names, either the father or the grandfather or an ancestor. So in the family genealogy of the prophet, Spitama is the 9th ancestor of the prophet. And Spitama means whitest or purest. And that's why we refer to Zarathustra as Zarathustra's Spitama. Now there are many titles given to Prophet Zarathustra in the Persian and the Avestan languages. In Avestan, we generally refer to Zarathustra as Ashavan, from which in later languages we get the word Ashur. Ashur generally means a righteous or a truthful person, but if we go to see the real meaning of the word, it means one who knows one's life's plan, one's life's path. And Zarathustra of course knew this. That's why he smiled or laughed at birth. So he is always referred to as Ashur Zarathustra's Pitama. Going further on, there are some Persian words used to describe the prophet. In some pictures of Zarathustra, they are written at the bottom or at the top. And these Persian words are Vakshure Vakshuran. Vakshure Vakshuran means prophet of prophets. The word actually comes from the Persian words Vaksh. Vaksh means a word, and Var means one who carries the word. So a prophet carries the word of God. That's why he is called Vakshuran. Vakshuran means prophet of prophets. He is also referred to as Aurana because he brings the message of Aura. He brings the teachings of Aura Masa. And the last word is very quaint. He is called Ramsgo. Ramsgo means revealer of secrets. Because you know, a prophet's message, you can just read it as a novel, you can just read it as a book. But when you start studying and trying to go deeper into his message, something new is always revealed to you. In the message of the prophet, there are secrets which you need to understand. Take for example a word like Asha in Avastha. The word Asha in Avastha cannot be translated in any of the languages because there is no exact word for it. So that's why people translate it as many different ways. It's translated as truth, goodness, honesty, piety, purity, righteousness. So depending on the context, it's used differently. So that's why we are told that even Yathavaidu has 50 different meanings. Because Yathavaidu has many technical words like Ahu and Ratu and Rigubyo which are open to interpretations. Plus there is only one verb in the whole of Yathavaidu and it's in a very archaic language. Yathavaidu is the first and the oldest of our Avestan prayers. The prayer of creation. So every time a person reads it, he sees something different. And that's why Prophet Zarathustra was called revealer of divine secrets. Now going to his family, we know that his father was called Paurushaspa. Once again, pastoral economy, Paurushaspa means, Pauru means many. Even today we use the word Pur or Purna. And Aspa in Avastha or Ashwa in Hindi or Sanskrit means a horse. Those who are watching the Rana Pratap serial, Rana Pratap is presently referred to as Ashwa Palak. Means one who looks after a horse. So that Ashwa or Aspa comes from the original Avastan and Sanskrit words. The grandfather of Prophet Zarathustra was Peteras. Once again, meaning having plentiful of horses. A wealthy person, a person who is well-to-do was generally referred to as having plenty of horses. His mother was Dugdova or Dugdova. Once again an agrarian term. Dugdha means milk. Actually, after we use the term Dudh for milk. Avastan term is Dugdha. So Dugdova is one who milks the cows. A milkmaid. And Dugdova's father was Frahimva, who belonged to the clan of the Zavish or Zoish. So this is in short the family name. Now not much is known about his brothers, but he had brothers also who are referred to in the later text. They were Ratushtra and Rangushtra. Once again see the Ushtra, Zarathustra, Ratushtra and Rangushtra. Now it makes more sense. So these three brothers and the younger ones were called Notrik and Nivatush. So in all they were 6 brothers. Now comes a very beautiful and unique aspect of the prophet. Zarathustra, how did he came or why did he came on the earth? Now the Gathas, we generally say, you must have heard the word Gathas. Gathas are poetic hymns of Prophet Zarathustra himself. There are 17 such hymns which are called Gathas, and as the word indicates, they are songs, they are poetic, they are metrical. And they are Prophet Zarathustra's own thoughts, his own conversations with God, his own emotions, his own happiness, his own anguish, his own meeting with different people, his meeting with the patron. All this is represented many a times in first person in the Gathas.
Gatha also means story.
No, Gatha never means stories. Gatha means a song.
But he composed them himself.
Yes, yes. Zarathustra composed them himself. and nobody refutes it. As for the other avastha, there are refutations whether Prophet Zarathustra himself did it, or his followers did it, or somebody else did it. We won't touch that now. But there is no refutation to the fact that the Gathas are the Prophet's own words.
It is in avastha.
It's in an avastha which is dialectically different from the rest of the avastha. That's why linguists call it the Gathic avastha, and the other avastha they call it, give it some other name, the later avastha or something. There are, like, for those who know Gujarati, you know that Gujarati, Parsi Gujarati is different from proper Gujarati, Shuddha Gujarati that is spoken many a times in Gujarat. And even among Gujaratis, this sects like the Banyas and all, they have a different dialect of Gujarati. So similarly, the Gathic avastha is somewhat different from the rest of the avastha. Now, some people say that it is because of the chronological difference, means the difference in time. Whereas some believe that it's a difference in geographical difference in place. Because we know that Zarathustra originally was born in West. And from thence it travelled to the East. These Gathas have that influence of Western avastha. Whereas the rest of the avastha is Eastern avastha. That's why this is a dialectical difference. So this is one of the things which is not yet properly settled.
Is he the writer of the entire avastha?
As I said, it's a matter of debate whether the later avastha was composed by him, or whether he just supervised the composition, or whether it was composed by somebody much later on. So this is a matter of debate.
Some of the players were there prior to that also. Sadra and Kasti was there before.
Yeah, as I said, the Mazdiyasti belief system was there hundreds of years before the Prophet, and many things in the Mazdiyasti belief system, like Sadra Kasti, like the praying to the fire, like certain rituals in their archaic form, like certain prayers like Ashemo Yatha Vedyo India Kam.
They were there already.
They were there in the Mazdiyasti belief system, which Zarathustra accepted and then added on quite a few things himself. And that's why we call ourselves Mazdiyasti Zarathustra. If you remember the story to which we will come later on, that when he went for his communication with Aura Mazda, his father asked him, what do you want from me?
He said the virgin.
And what did he say? Your Kasti father. That means that before he became a prophet, there was Sadra Kasti was already on. And he did not ask for Kasti. Many people say, why did he ask for Kasti? Especially children. So he only had Sadra Kasti nahi hote. So he Sadra Kasti nahi pehta tha. No, this is symbolic. Him asking of Sadra Kasti from his father means that he accepted all that was good in the Mazdiyasti belief system. And then he set out for his dialogue with Aura Mazda, and then that was a part of the Mazdiyasti Zoroastrian religion. So this is a very beautiful thing, that how did Prophet Zarathustra come about into this world. Now in the Gatha itself, in very famous verse 29.1, where we are told Shmaivya Dev Shurva Gerezda Kambahima Tvarozdum Kema Tashar Ama Eshemo Hazarscharemo Ahushya Dereshcha Tevishcha Noit Moi Vasta Shmatanyo Athamoi Sasta Vahu Vastriya. That is Zarathustra, Gave Shurvan. Shmaivya Gave Shurva. Lamented to Aura Mazda, that why have you created me? Why have you fashioned me? There is lot of violence on this earth, lot of pain, lot of negativity, and I cannot turn to anybody but you. So please deliver me from this distress. And as a response to this, Aura Mazda had a conference with his Ameshastras, and in this conference, in these consultations, they discussed which soul should be selected, which soul is worthy to go to deliver Mother Earth of her distress. And after much consultation, they decided upon one soul only, unanimously, and that was the soul of Prophet Zarathustra. They say that we see no other soul who is fit for this work. And then they told Mother Earth that yes, we will be sending you some help. So she asked, who is it? So he says, we are sending a prophet, a priest, a prophet. He says, no, 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 I want a powerful king. I don't want a priest, I don't want a prophet. So Brahmaza tells Mother Earth that what you require just now is long-term solution. And a long-term solution can only be brought about by a prophet. So then, finally Mother got there. Then started preparations. And see the beautiful preparations that are there. First of all, the prophet Khore, that is divine energy, has to be sent. Because for doing any work, a human being requires divine energy. And to become a prophet, special divine energy is required. So that divine energy was sent to whom? To the mother. But here the mother was not even born, she was still in the womb of her mother. So at that time that energy, divine energy called Khore, Zarathustra Khore, that was sent into the womb. And then when Lagdobanu was born, she was born with that divine energy. So everything was predestined. And we all know the story that when the villagers saw this divine effulgence, this divine light in this child, they said that she is evil because they were afraid. They felt insecurity. So in turn they blamed her to be evil. And so she was sent away from her village to a neighboring village where she was destined to meet the person whom she was to wed. And to them Zarathustra was to be born. So that is how her divine energy was sent first to the hearth fire of the grandfather's house. From the hearth fire to the womb. From the womb to Lagdobanu. So Lagdobanu, in Lagdobanu it was safe. Then came the second aspect. The aspect of the Fravashi. Now every human being has a Fravashi, a guardian angel. So in our pelvic book called Dinkar, there is this beautiful narration of how Zarathustra's Fravashi was sent to this world. Zarathustra's Fravashi was sent in a stalk of a plant. We have a plant called the home plant. Home plant is a very sacred plant even today used in our rituals. So in the home plant, this Rameshasvans came and kept this stalk of home. And it says that there were two birds on that tree who were continuously harassed by a snake. But as soon as this home stalk was put on the plant, quite at a height, because nobody else could touch it, it was reserved for Paurushasva. It was kept at a height. But as soon as the home stalk came there, the snake who used to come and harass the two birds and eat away their eggs from their nest, he could not come on the tree. Then after several years, when Zarathustra was born, when Paurushasva and Lagdobanu went, at that time Paurushasva had to perform a ritual. And for that yasna ritual, home ritual, he had to take the stalk of home. And for that purpose, he was led to that particular tree, divinely led. And then that stalk of home came down, near where his hand was. And so he took that stalk of home. And so the Fravashi of Zarathustra came to Paurushasva because in the ritual then, he used it. And then they drank that part of what came out of the ritual, he and Lagdobanu. Then the physical essence, from where does that come? So it says that they requested the clouds to carry his physical essence. The clouds carried it as rain, and then it rained on the earth. From there it was transmitted to the grass. Some white cows grazed on that grass. And one of those cows was selected by Paurushasva to take milk for the home ritual. So Zarathustra's physical essence, his Fravashi, all came together. And so Zarathustra was conceived, but all these essences were specially sent for him. His preparation for his birth was already in place. Now, all children generally know the story that when Zarathustra was in the womb, in the mother's stomach, Ahriman tried to kill the child. So Dr. Banu had frightening dreams in which animals came to rip away the child in her womb. But every time that the wild animals came, symbolically Ahriman, two pious men came and drove away those wild animals. And those two pious men were Saroshazan and Manameshas. Eventually Prophet Zarathustra was born, and when he was born, his whole village was bathed in a white light, which was one of the indications of the miraculous birth of the Prophet. And the second indication was that he smiled at the time of his birth. And we are told that he smiled because he knew the purpose of his life. He knew why he had come. And right since the time he was born, he says, we are told Ahriman, the evil spirit, Angramayu, started to tremble. And so he started making evil people go and kill the child. Traditionally, we are told that Prophet Zarathustra was born on Roj Khordad of Ma Farvardin, the sixth day of the first month, which we celebrate as Bardasar. Now, when Zarathustra was still an infant, the evil chieftain of the village was instigated by Ahriman to kill child Zarathustra. So, first he threw him in a fire, but the fire turned into a bed of roses. Then he tried to kill him by first keeping him in a herd of cattle, and then placing him in a herd of flock of horses. And each time a white cow and a white horse stood on the child and protected it, and then the mother came and took away the child. Finally, what Durasura did was, he tried to kill the child by placing him in a den of wolves. But first he ripped apart the cubs of the wolves. So when the parents would see the child, they would rip it apart. But some divine protection covered the child, and the wolves were not able to come near the child. And again the child, that is Zarathustra, was saved. As a last ditch attempt, Durasura tried to kill him himself by piercing him with a dagger. But this time his hand became paralyzed, his hand became immobile, and he was caught in the act, and throughout his life he became a paralyzed man. So that's how the child was saved. Later also, other evil people who are referred to as Bhratropresh and Durasura tried to kill child Zarathustra. Not child, like he was 12 years old, but they tried to give him poison when he was ill. They came as doctors to kill the child. But he was always saved because he was forewarned of these things. Now, Zarathustra's father knew that his child was special, firstly because of the dream that Dr. Banu was having when he was a child. Then, because Zarathustra was asking questions that nobody could answer, neither himself nor anybody else. He was also placed in the tutorship of a teacher called Gurjin Kurush, a very learned man. But he also was not able to answer Zarathustra's questions. And what were the main questions? The main question is, why is there evil in the world? Why does not God stop this evil? Why are people troubled and pain in the world? And nobody was able to satisfactorily give him this answer. He continued to be a good child, a good boy, a good youth. But this question kept on playing in his mind. Till one fine day at the age of 20, his father also realized that this boy has a divine mission. So when he asked that he be allowed to go to ask this question directly to Aurangzeb, his father allowed him. We are told that Zarathustra went on a mountain called Kushi Darena. Now once again there seems to be a symbolic meaning over here, because generally our intellect is referred to as a mountain, because in the scheme of things our body is also like a mountain. And secondly, the word Kushi Darena means the holder of the intellect or the holder of the consciousness, which refers to the mind. So Zarathustra in some way either went up on Mount Kushidarena, or symbolically he just meditated, he just went into himself, kept on asking the questions, and finally after 10 long years of asking questions to Aura Mazda, during which time most of the gathas were perhaps coming out of it. So during this process, at the age of 30 we are told that Brahmanameshaspan and Saroshyasar, once again two divine beings who rule the mind. Saroshyasar gives divine intuition and Brahmanameshaspan looks after the entire consciousness. So these two divine beings led Prophet Zarathustra through a river to a conference with Aura Mazda, where Zarathustra got all the answers to his questions and he sort of got what we call the revelation. He was a satisfied man. And then he also received what we have called the Kayan Khoi. That's a divine energy of authority. And with these two energies, he went out to the world to propagate his message. Now, Ahriman tried every trick in his book to stop the prophet. At first, he tried to destroy him, but he realized that he is divinely protected. He sent the horde of his demons, but they were also not able to do anything. Then he tried to bribe the prophet. He said, I will make you the biggest king in the world. I will give you the greatest kingship. But still Zarathustra was in no mood to accept all these nonsense. Finally he threatened to personally come somehow and kill him. But Zarathustra said, you break all the bones in my body. In Vandilar 19 there is a beautiful line which says, Noite apastavane vambuhik daina masdeyasti. I will not forsake the masdeyasti religion. Whether you break my bones, whether you rip me apart, whether you take away my consciousness, I am not going to differ from my mission. And then he started propagating his message of the Masdeyasti Zarathustra religion. The first of his disciples was Maidhyama, who was his paternal cousin. But initially he had a very few disciples, because on the other hand there were a group of people called Devayastis, means those who did not believe in Masdeyastis. As you know, Mother Earth cried out to Aura Mazda because there was a lot of evil in the world. And that's how initially Zarathustra found it difficult to convince people about the message that he has revealed and how it is important to be away from evil. Then in the court of King Vishtas, when he went for 10 years almost, he went from west to east, he reached Bactria. In Bactria he reached the court, in Bactria was the court of King Vishtas or Gushtas. It is known by this name, which are different in different languages. So when King Gushtas came to know, he was a Masdeyasti himself. But when he came to know that a prophet has come who says that he is a Masdeyasti and he got the message of Mazda, he invited him to his court. He was highly impressed and convinced, and so he asked him to stay in the court. He gave him the pride of place, and his queen, his princess, his ministers, all were very much influenced by him. So Queen Rutosar, Ketayun, Prince Aspandya, Minister Jamasan Prashostra, all of them were very much impressed by him. We are told that even philosophers from afar, like Greece and India, came and were convinced by the prophet's greatness. Then we are told that jealous courtiers instigated the king about saying that the prophet got his power from black magic and that he had ingredients of black magic in his room. So the king asked his courtiers to go and examine the room of Prophet Zarathustra. This is a well-known story, so I am not going in great detail. The people saw those things which were planted by others, and so the king was very unhappy, but then he punished the prophet. He put him in prison. But then the prophet took it very stoically. Then one fine day, we are told that the king's favorite horse, which was a black horse, Aspesiha means a black horse, fell ill. His 4 legs were embedded in his stomach. No one was able to cure him. And that is why that is when Prophet Zarathustra sent a message when he came to know that I will cure him by the power of the Mazdiasni Zarathustra religion. And indeed Prophet Zarathustra healed the horse by his prayers, and that is how the king was now thoroughly convinced about the Prophet's authenticity. Now there may be a hidden story behind this, that Aspasiya may mean the mind of the Prophet, and what was covered by doubt was the mind of the king, sorry, not mind of the Prophet, mind of the king, and what was cleared by the prayer was the mind of the king. And as one doubt after other were cleared, the Prophet asked one of the family members to accept him as a prophet. And finally, he asked the guard to tell the truth, and finally the truth was told, and so the prophet was finally accepted. Now that was at age 40. So Zarathustra was accepted as a prophet at age 40. Still, as further proof, he gave 3 things to King Vishtas. One was the Adar Burzimmer fire, which was a fire which did not give out smoke, which did not need much fuel, which was not very hot and did not burn when held in the hand, and there was a special spiritual fire. Even today we see in the picture of Prophet Zarathustra him holding this fire. Then another thing was a cypress tree. Each of its leaf had a message for the king. And the third thing we are told that the prophet brought with him was the 21 nasks or volumes in which there was a lot of information, scriptures, text and knowledge. The knowledge about the whole world, we are told, was there in this 21 volumes or nasks. Now the entire family of the king accepted the religion. Now an important aspect about the prophet are whether he had wife and children. Now when we are told, generally, we as ordinary mortals think that a marriage is only meant for an ordinary person, and a person of a status or a stature of a prophet should not or may not marry. Now in the first place, the Zoroastrian religion has got no reservations against marriage. In fact, in the Vandidar and in many other texts, we are enjoined to marry. We are told that the person who marries is more dear to Auravasta than a person who does not marry. We are told that the person who marries and procreates is still dearer to God and the Prophet. So there is no reservation on marriage or procreation. Now coming to Prophet Zarathustra, in the Avastha once again, there are no direct reference to his marriage or children. But in later works, we are told that he had a wife by the name Ahovi, and he had 3 sons and 3 daughters. In a still later tradition, we are told that he had many other sons and other wives. Now generally, as we know in religion, such things are always should be taken with a pinch of salt. Because what we are told over here is that one of his sons will be born after 1,000 years. When there is a talk of the other wives, we are told that their sons will be born after thousands of years as saviors. So here we know that the reference to the wives is not actually wives, but some sort of a power of the prophet, and the son who is to be born after 1,000 years are the remaining Sotians who are to be born. But these are the writings in the text about the marital status of the prophet. Now finally, the death of the prophet or the passing away. Now once again, there are 2 opinions over here. In the Avastha, there is no mention about the passing away of the prophet. Nowhere in the Avastha. But in Belvi, in the later text, we are told that the prophet passed away at 77. Then we are told that the word for his passing away, the word that is used is Vihes Zarathustra. Vihes means ascension of Zarathustra or going up of Zarathustra. Nowhere it is written as the physical death. And further on over here, we are told that when this Vihes took place, there was something called Tur in the atmosphere, and that Tur also got destroyed. Now generally there is no explanation as to what this Tur is and how it got destroyed or what got destroyed. But generally it is believed that Tur was all the collection of the negativities of the world, which at the time of the ascension of the Prophet, the energy that was released destroyed all those negativities that had collected, which would then later may have come upon the people of the Prophet. So the process of the passing away of Zarathustra is referred to as Vihes, and the purpose of his passing away at the age of 77 is to destroy this Tur. Now in later Persian text, some people did not properly understand this Tur and its destruction, and so they implemented it as Tur as a name for man, a soldier, a person, and his destruction was further explained as that Prophet himself destroyed it. Prophet did destroy that real Tur, means a collection of the evil, but in this Persian story that came about much later on, they replaced the Tur as a man and his destruction by the Prophet as a real killing of the Prophet by the swinging of a rosary. So that's how that misconception arose that Prophet Zarathustra was killed by a person called Tur-Baratur, and in retaliation the Prophet killed him with his rosary. But this story does not make sense for the simple reason, as we all know and as we have seen, is that even Ahriman and all his brood, all his evil, was not able to approach Zarathustra because he was divinely protected. So an ordinary soldier coming and stabbing from the back and the Prophet killing him does not make sense at all. So actually the Prophet did not die as we ordinary mortals do, because his physical essence was very special. His physical essence was very fine. And that's why we are told in Pelvi that the Ameshasmans directly came to welcome the Prophet, and his body and his physical and spiritual constituents were directly taken by the Ameshasmans to the heavenly lands. So today what do we have as the Prophet Zarathustra's legacy? We have this powerful religion, very strong and powerful religion. The very fact that it has existed for so many thousands of years itself is a proof that it is a strong and powerful religion. But what are the special legacies? What is something special about the religion? Firstly, it gave a very special view about the whole world and the universe, about why we exist, about the philosophy of our life, and that is the biggest legacy of our religion. How we view ourselves in the world view and a personal view. Second thing is that our religion has given us, that Prophet Zarathustra has given us, is a very strong moral order. There is a moral order which is there in the concept of the seven Ameshasmans. Now, we are not told that we have to be good for the sake of being good. We are told that being good is necessary for evolution. So for being spiritual, there is no way out but to be moral and ethical. So it is not an option, but it is a path. In the Zoroastrian religion, the moral order is shown as a path connecting to the other things, connecting to the divine. It is not separate by itself. It's connected. Thirdly, we are given a set of prayers and rituals which would help us fulfill the above two purposes. Fourthly, we have certain daily practices which anybody and everybody can do to be in tune with these things. And finally, we have religious text. A very small portion exists Now, of what was originally given by the Prophet. We all know that. But even that small portion, it could be about 5 to 10% of the original. But even that small portion is such a huge and vast treasure in it that is there to be read, understood and explored to be able to live a happy and fulfilling life. So thank you very much for your patience. We finished today's session over here. For those who are getting delayed, they may go. For the rest, we can have a discussion session over here for further 10-15 minutes. Okay, yes, that madam. Yes, Disha.
So what is now, as I say, there is a moral order that we follow. So after our death, what happens? Whatever good and righteous life you have tried to live, maybe you have not reached
Yeah.
a direct connection with.
Yeah, in the sessions that we are going to cover, we'll deal with this in greater detail. But just in brief, that we all have souls. And whatever moral order that we follow, that will be recorded in the soul. Actually not only recorded, but that will be the reward and retribution of the soul. And that is what will carry after our death, because our soul is immortal. So this moral order we have to follow, but in order to convince ourselves to follow the moral order, because we are human beings, we need convincing. And only if we are convinced, we will do it. So that's why the whole philosophy of the religion is in its place. The whole concept of a human being is in its place. So if we understand ourselves, if we understand the world, then we know how to relate with the world, and then the moral order will come into picture. And then if we are convinced and if we follow it, it will be a happy life. Because when we are forced to do something, we are reluctant. But when we are happy to do something, automatically the life will be happy. So in this life as well as the further life, there is happiness. And happiness is the goal and aim of all human beings. And that is what religion is meant for.
We believe in reincarnation.
We again, the question is whether we believe in reincarnation. Now, this is a question which needs a detailed explanation and answer, and which we are covering in one of our sessions. But in short, in the Zoroastrian text that we have, there is no direct reference to reincarnation in any form, whether there is or there is not. Now, some people interpret text that will, when we go in detail, we will see that some people interpret some part of text whether to show us that there is reincarnation or to show us that there is no reincarnation. But mainstream Zoroastrian religion scholars admit and agree that there is no reincarnation in Zoroastrian religion. There are groups among Zoroastrians who do believe that there is reincarnation. So as I said, you will get both the sides of the picture, and you will have to convince yourself whether you are going to come back or not.
So what happens to the soul? What happens to the soul?
We are going to
cover that.
We are going to cover all that in the session, so I am not going there.
That is what we have to learn.
Yes, we will cover that. We will cover that.
Reincarnation is a practice. Zarathustra is the first.
The present discussion, sorry, it's mainly about Zarathustra, about what we talked about today.
So we believe that he is the first profitable revealing religion. But what about like the Judeo-Christian Islamic thing where they consider Abraham a prophet also? But he was long before Zarathustra, wasn't he?
Socials.
Huh?
No, Abraham.
No.
The Zarathustra was before the biblical prophets.
Including Abraham.
Yeah.
Before that.
Even the Jewish friends were not
Abraham is
sure
not
that it was
Abraham.
In Islam.
Yes.
And so many things are similar, like some words, some names.
Yeah, Zoroastrian religion has obviously influenced all other world religions in one way or the other. It has influenced Hinduism, firstly because it was they were Aryans who staying together, and then in India not in India, but
View.
our Achaemenian kings had India, part of India as a kingdom. So in that way, India we had close relations with the Hindus. Then we have influenced all the Abrahamic religions because we have come into contact with them. The religions were born almost when the Zoroastrian kings were in power. Jesus Christ was born, Muhammad was born, Prophet Muhammad was born when Zoroastrian kings were in power. And so, being a religion which was very old, it has definitely influenced, and it's a universally accepted fact. It is not something that Zoroastrians are just saying to be proud about it. It's a universally accepted fact that it has influenced them. We will go in greater detail perhaps of how it influences, what are the points of influence, but it is accepted.
Now, the ego that Vairami has said, no, it's just as strong as such. But is it right or it is not in our scripture? We are doing something
See,
wrong?
Vairami is not ego. It is mushkil asana, not ego generally we say. Now, generally, if you go to see, it's a story in Gujarat.
Yes.
And this Gujarati story is based on a Persian story. Originally, in Iran, about 150-200 years back, the Muslims ladies had a practice of doing a ritual generally referred to as a sofri. Yeah. There they invoked their BB. BB means a divine being. 2 or 3 different BBs. It was a ladies' ritual. Generally now, thereafter the Iranian ladies saw this ritual and they also adopted that ritual. But in that, there was a change, that the names were changed, the stories were changed to a certain extent. And then it came to India. When it came to India, it was translated into Gujarati. But it is not a very old tradition. It's comparatively only about 150 to 200 years old. And it's not something which is mainstream Zoroastrian religion. So that's why many Dasturjis and religious scholars are not in favor of doing it. But I personally do not see any harm if you are doing it. It is better to pray our avastha in a way. If you got the time and the inclination, it is better to pray the avastha than say the Gujarati story. But if it is helping you in some way to keep your faith alive or to keep you within the religion, then I don't see any harm in doing it.
What is the home tree you mentioned? It's a plant that grows in Iran.
In the Mazda-Yasni belief system, prior to Prophet Zarathustra, there were some divine beings. And there was a divine being called Om Yasar. Now to invoke Om Yasar, one plant was used, it was pounded and its juice was drunk. And the plant whose twig was used was also called Om tree. Now today scientifically this tree or this plant is referred to as ephedra. In scientific name is ephedra. Now even the Hindus had a similar custom, the Aryans of course, they had something called the Som tree. And they did the Som ritual as we do the home ritual. Now this home plant grows only in dry hilly areas. So it doesn't grow in India. It only grows in Iran and parts of Afghanistan. So we ask for twigs because dried twigs have to be used. Fresh twigs cannot be used. Dried twigs of home trees are even today used in rituals like Bijasti, Whisperer and Bandidar, where it is pounded along with pomegranate twigs, goat's milk, well water and a juice is made, which is generally referred to as Omnu Pani or Omnu Ras. And then it is, the sips of it are taken by the laity.
Is there a connection in the language between Avastha and Sanskrit?
Very much. They are called sister languages. As I said, home and so. Many words in Avastha are same as in Sanskrit. But how in Avastha it changes to sa in Sanskrit.
Okay.
Za in Avastha changes to da in Sanskrit.
So the
In fact, some scholar had translated or translated Yatha into Sanskrit. And it was so similar, it went like this Yatha Asu Varyo, Atha Ratush, Asat Chit Sacha. Like the similarity is so strong. So there are many names, similarities abound. So much so that when Avesta language and grammar was forgotten, European scholars used the Sanskrit language to revive the grammar of the Avesta language. It is so simple.
Saroshni, the word starts with shnu. Shnu is to hear.
Yes, in both Avesta and Sanskrit, there are many similar roots. And one of the similar roots is Sru to hear.
Hear
Shravan.
means to understand.
But what is the word for mind in Avesta? Man. Man to think.
Correct.
There are many such words you can get which have now come down even to the Gujarati language. Because Sanskrit, Hindi, Persian, Madhu Gujarati, after Parsi Gujarati has taken a lot from these languages. Yeah, sure. Hey, those who want to leave the name up, please, those who are getting delayed. Yes?
So this 21 nas, that can be repeated to us again.
Kind of. Everyone.
Office block 21 nas,
Nask.
yeah, in that form. So they are lost today.
Yes.
Are they still there? Is it?
Lost.
21 Nasks.
Yeah, only one is there.
Only one is remaining, the Vakita is the only surviving Nask. The rest of the Avasta that we have are remnants of the other Nasks, which were used as text for rituals. That's why they have survived. What has survived today are daily prayers and rituals. The rest is lost. But what we have are,
In Paisley language, all the 21 nas are available.
no, in the Pelvi language, a summary of all the Nask is available, not the Nask.
But the gathas are not a part of the Nask.
They are a part of the Nask.
But then what?
But the entire Nask has not remained. Like we know that Yash hai, they form a part of certain Nask. Ijashni hai, it forms a part of certain Nask.
We only have this.
So those things which are taken from there for certain purpose, like अपन quote करिए थे, the quote रहेगी original घूमेंगी. Then those that was taken for the ritual purpose or prayer purpose, that has remained, but the original is lost.
We lost the original gathas also.
No, all the
gathas
gathas
are
are
normally?
because they were all used, all of them were used in a text called Yasna or Ijashni. But the book of which they were a part, all of them were not gathas. Gathas formed a part of another big book, which was on the life of the prophet. That is lost.
How is it lost?
Due to the vicissitudes of time, like our Iranian empire was destroyed first by Alexander and Persepolis, then by the Arabs, then by the Mongols, the Turks. Many people destroyed the Iranian empire. Mongols were the last ones to completely destroy all our texts. 9th, 10th century were 9th, 10th century AC were BC. Is after Christ. Okay? Thank you. Good night.
Good night.